The main theme of this talk is on relationships and on peach blossom. So it encompasses both your 4 pillars reading, which requires your year, month, day, and hour, so your birth date. And it also encompasses Feng Shui. So I look at it from a holistic point of view, not just from a Feng Shui perspective. I look, whenever I do a consultation, I usually look at a person's birth date before moving on. I was trained from the traditional Chinese classic way, so basically my practice is more Chinese related. So let's begin. So this talk is about how to incorporate Feng Shui into a relationship life, using 4 pillars of destiny to evaluate relationships. And I'll also talk about the I Ching. The I Ching is basically natural laws. Mr. Lim here, he talked a little bit about the hexagrams today, and I will carry on a little bit more on the hexagrams, and you'll also get 2 more hexagrams for today. So there's a reason why I wrote a book and released a book on relationships this year. It's not a coincidence. I decided to write about relationships because I knew that there's going to be a lot of relationship issues this year. More than 70% of my consultations this year has been with young women that were born between 1986 and 1990s, in mid-1990s. There's a reason for that, because the annual star this year for 2011 is the annual 7 representing the youngest female in the family. And young female is locked in prison. It's in the center. So this is the center of attention for this year. And early this year, when we moved on to the year of the rabbit, you notice a lot of news regarding affairs and issues with men and women. And it's been a trend for this year overall. I see a lot more relationship issues in my consultations, in a lot of my other associates' consultations, than dealing with money. So young women having lots of issues for this year. Obviously, you also have to look at the person's birth chart, right? We can't just generalize and say, okay, you're going to have relationship issues for this year just because you're a young female. Your birth date, your birth location, where you were born in also makes a difference. So Doi Gua representing the youngest female of the family. So year of the rabbit, you got the yin metal on top of the rabbit. Rabbit representing the yin wood. So you got metal in conflict with the yin wood, so they're fighting each other. And the rabbit also represents a romance star. It's a cardinal. So in terms of your rooster, horse, the rat, and the rabbit, these are cardinals and they represent the romance star. It depends on your birth year in order to determine your romance star. Everyone has their own personal romance star. This year, as I mentioned, the unearthing of scandals and affairs. So we've been seeing a lot of issues that are in the news, starting with the Italian president, Berlusconi. He had a lot of issues this year. And you can actually tell from his birth chart itself too. He does not like the rabbit, himself being a yang wood self. I'm not going to get into any further details, but we can talk about that after if you want to know more about him. Okay, first off, let's just quickly cover these hexagrams. So there are 64 hexagrams. This is one of them. Whenever I do a consultation that's related to relationships, I would refer to this hexagram number 31 for those who are dating, because we want to know, okay, what is the hexagram trying to tell us? For this one, you got the youngest female on the top, and then you got the youngest male on the bottom. This youngest female is on the outer hexagram. We look at this as the outer, this is the inner. So in terms of relationships, the I Ching is telling us that the female is more in the center of attention. She's on the outside. You want to give her all the attention. So you have to buy her flowers. But obviously, it does not operate this way all the time in relationships, right? So with this I Ching, I should actually mention a lot of my studies has been with Lily Chung, and she wrote a book called Succeed Naturally. You can look for it online. Basically, I've quoted some of her examples from this book. So with this specific hexagram, she mentions that the fundamental requirement of dating is mutual vibration. And the elements involved, earth and metal. This earth underneath is feeding the metal. So you need mutual support. So in general, when you're dating, obviously you want the male to support the female. That's what the I Ching is telling us. But in Western societies, and even in modern societies now, things are changing where the female is becoming the more dominant figure. There's a lot of changes, and it is explainable through the I Ching. So in terms of the laws of dating, you want the dating partners to have a bonding chemistry. Obviously, if I work at McDonald's and you're a Feng Shui master, there's little bonding between us because I'm busy flipping burgers, right? And you're busy holding the compass. So we're in different levels of society. Sometimes it's unfortunate, but that's the case. It's better to date someone in the same social rank, preferably a similar age, so you share things in common, right? You're not gonna, like, let's say you're 60 years old. You're not gonna go out there and date a 19-year-old, right? This little girl, right? It's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work, right? This young female is probably into Justin Bieber. You're in your 60s and you're listening to the Beatles. So how is that gonna connect, right? That's what the I Ching is telling us. A lot of people might not accept what it's trying to tell us, but in terms of trying to date, we should try and follow these rules. How do we determine chemistry? Very easy. For those who understand 4 pillars of destiny and actually practice it, it's very easy. Like if I were to grab anyone's birth chart, I would look at it, and a couple's birth chart, basically, I would look at the husband and the wife and determine whether they are really compatible to each other. And if you're not, what's gonna happen? Well, there are lots of remedies that we can cover. It's very difficult for me to cover all types of remedies here in this short presentation. The other hexagram I want to quickly cover is hexagram number 32. It talks about managing a relationship. Remember how the previous hexagram you had the youngest female on top and the youngest male on the bottom. Now this has changed. With hexagram 32, you got this, the oldest son, and now you got the oldest daughter. So now what the I Ching is telling us is that the oldest man who's already married, he has to be out there and working, while the oldest daughter is at home taking care of the family household chores and all that. Obviously, it's very difficult right now, economic issues. We all have to go to work. When we go to work, relationship might suffer because you see your partner less. And the I Ching tells us that it is, in general, better for the male to be on the outside working and the female to be at home and taking care of the kids and so on and so forth. A lot of people might disagree with this. It's fine. But obviously, this is the formula to follow. Like I said in the previous hexagram, it's better for the adults to be compatible in social rank and age. It is better that way. So in this hexagram, you got thunder and you got wind moving together as a rhythm. So in the hexagram 31 and 32, you've got the same number of yin lines and the same number of yang lines. So that means mutual benefit and mutual cooperation. You want them to cooperate together. In this specific hexagram, hexagram 32, you got the 2 wood trigrams. This wood means kindness, caring, and fairness. So obviously, you want to be kind and fair with your partner. When you suddenly decide to argue on a consistent basis, obviously this relationship's not going to last very long. So enough of the philosophical talk. I'm going to quickly move on to Feng Shui. Steps for a healthy relationship. In Feng Shui, we always want to look at the entry. That is the mouth of Qi. What are you bringing into your house? We can analyze it through the use of flying stars, annual stars, and 8 mansions. Obviously, there are a number of different methods, but these are the methods that I would analyze when I do a Feng Shui consultation. You would want to analyze what's going on around the neighborhood. Just because you have nice flying stars, it does not mean that your house is going to be perfect, because you also have to look at the form, landforms, in which was talked about earlier in this program, in this conference. We also have to look at water features and plants, because water features and plants can also enhance a relationship, or it could cause problem in relationship. It depends on where you place it and what types of energies are involved in that specific sector. So, Compass School, which I mentioned, these are the methods that I use, and obviously incorporating 4 pillars into an assessment. I can't live in a Feng Shui consultation without using 4 pillars. That's my practice. Everybody has their own methods, but that's what I depend on. So entry, it's the mouth of energy for the house, right? You want it to be nourished. You want it to be clean. You want, when you open the door, you want everything to be nice outside, right? And sometimes it's not the case. You might have what we call poison arrows or sha qi facing the front door. What do you do with it, right? Remedies, you have to think about remedies as well. Stories can be told about what's going on in a house from just looking at the form of the house. There's a Chinese saying, basically, this means double door facing double trees resembles romance. So what does this actually mean? Is there a marker that I can use to draw? I can actually draw on that. So Feng Shui is also psychological. If you look at, let's say you have a house, oops, kind of an ugly tree here. Here's your building. This old saying is what it means. There's double doors and double trees. So when the sun shines downwards, you might have something that resembles this, right? 2 people holding hands and walking into this house. If you see this in an office building or a business unit, high possibilities of affairs in this building. Nepotism as well. Let's say you're a boss and you want to promote someone. Obviously, you might want to promote someone that's pretty or handsome or that someone that always, like in Chinese we call it polishes your shoes. So that's the type of things that would happen in such a building. Just trying to press on this. Oh, there's the other one, which talks about double doors and double water. Well, obviously, when you go to do a Feng Shui consultation or look at buildings, you rarely would you see these where you would have 2 ponds in the front with double doors. It's just rare. This is an old saying, but you have to apply it from a modern day perspective. What does this actually mean? Okay, bedroom is here, right? You got this door facing a water feature, and then you got another water feature here. So there's actually double water facing this specific room. So when you go into a house, when you see something like this, high possibility of affairs going on from just looking at this. The bathroom, we were taught in general, it can contain negative energy towards the bedroom, but it can also represent peach blossom. So you have to be aware whenever you go do your Feng Shui consultation or even look at your own home. If you want to know whether your husband is cheating on you, you can look at this and see whether they have this type of a feature, right? In North America, it's less likely that we see buildings like this where the bedroom door opens towards another water feature and this opens to a water feature. But when you're in a tight space, like when I'm in Hong Kong, I see a lot of this happening. Well, when I see the customer, the wife tells me that the husband's constantly going up to Shenzhen. Well, Shenzhen is well known for a lot of saunas and massages and all that. So obviously there's stuff happening. And you can also tell from the person's birth chart. When I get the birth chart, I can already determine whether this person has a possibility of getting into affairs. Another bad feng shui form is this. This bed is in a tombstone position, or they would call it a coffin position. So the saying goes that if you're sleeping in such a position, at night your soul might get dragged out. In terms of what goes on in the daily life, there might be possibilities of, let's say, deaths or accidents or illnesses, right? In Chinese, with a Chinese group, it's easier for me to talk about deaths and accidents and all this. It's much more difficult, I find, talking about this with Westerners. But as feng shui consultants, we have to understand what's going on, and we have to tell them the bad news, and we have to give them the proper remedies. The important part is actually trying to find the bad news that might happen in the future, so we can determine what we can do to help them and prevent certain situations from happening. In terms of interior, when you focus on romance, you would focus on the bedroom. You would look at where the flowers are placed. If it's placed in a peach blossom or romance sector, high possibility of romance as well. Bed placement is important. Bed placement meaning utilizing your best direction, your head pointing towards the most favorable direction. Beams. Okay, about beams. There are lots of misconceptions about how beams work. I will provide you with a remedy. Let's say you are in a bedroom. This is your bed. Your head is here. And let's say there is a beam right here. So you're sleeping underneath a beam, which is a very common occurrence, right? Sometimes it's impossible to avoid. So a lot of people would think that because the beam is here, it is actually putting pressure onto your body. This is not really the case. If you think of it from a logical point of view, it's not this that's putting pressure. It's actually when energy travels. It likes to circle, right? Energy likes to meander. When it hits this, the energy is actually fired down from here, not from here. So essentially, it's like wind blasting here, and then you're getting the energy shot down here. So instead of this energy shooting right to your lungs, you might have issues with your stomach or leg area. So it depends on where the beam is located. With the beams, if you want a proper remedy, there are a number of them. The obvious one is getting rid of the beam, but sometimes it's impossible to get rid of the beam. What do you do in this case? Well, you could lower this, right? And make this the ceiling. Or I've seen other remedies where people might put like a sheet right here, like that. That is another remedy. I've also done one where it's right by the wall. So actually it's kind of curved. So the bed is down here, right? So the energy is just going through. Rather than shooting right here, now you've got it curved, right? So there are lots of options which you can choose from. I've seen ones where people would actually hang one of those Chinese gourds. They call it the wulou, the gourd here, thinking that that would help. Logically speaking, would that actually help? I don't think so, right? You gotta think of it from a logical perspective. Moving on, empty vase can also deflate a relationship or remove any types of, remove the possibilities of relationships. If you put an empty vase in your romance sector, you might accidentally remove any possibilities of having a relationship. I will actually explain how you can find your romance star before this presentation is over. Flying stars and water in a bedroom. Flying stars, the key stars in which you have to actually be aware of is the 4 and the 3. If they are in a specific palace, you got 2 wood in conflict, 2 sticks in conflict. To diffuse this issue, you can use red colors or electronic devices. Obviously, you don't want the 4 and the 3 in the bedroom. Then you're just gonna increase conflict. So let's say you got a 4 and a 3, whatever palace, let's say another 4, right? You see this in your bedroom, bedroom, obviously there's going to be conflict. You can actually tell that there's possibilities of conflict. Another one would be a 7 and a 6. This has more to do with your career, but I also noticed that a 7 and a 6, two metal conflicting each other, also causing conflicts within the bedroom. So if you see a 6 and a 7 and a 4 and a 3 in the bedroom, high possibilities of conflict. With this one, use red colors because you got wood, so fire reduces wood. With metal, you can use water. Water colors can also reduce the metal. Where to place an aquarium? Aquarium, you would want to place your aquarium in the romance sector. The romance sector, basically, if you were born, let's say, in the year of the rabbit, let's say this year's the year of the rabbit, your romance star is going to be the rat. So rat being the utmost north. I don't know why I like to write in Chinese, but this is the horse. Whoops. So these are the cardinal directions. You got the rabbit, the rat, the rooster, and the horse. If you were born in the year of the rabbit, your romance star is the rat. I will provide you with the formula in a few slides afterwards. But in general, you would want to put an aquarium in this sector to activate your romance sector. But we have to look at the entire birth chart to see whether this rat is actually favorable to you too. Because if you do not like water, if you accidentally activate that, that might also cause issues. It really depends on your birth chart. And it also depends on form too. Let's say there's a kitchen right here, right, already. Like you have a stove here, and then coincidentally, this rat is right next to the stove. You don't want to place water, like a big water feature next to the stove. Then you got fire and water in conflict. So there are a lot of exceptions to the rule. In 8 mansions, what we look at is what we call the 6 killing sector, called Loksa. In this sector, how do we determine where the 6 killings is? Well, first thing is that you have to be very familiar with the trigram. Let's say if your house is sitting north, for this, the Kan is north. You want to look for the 2 changing lines. So the 2 changing lines are the top one and the bottom one. To find the 6 killing sector, you have to find the changing lines of the top and the bottom. So this would be your 6 killing sector, the Qin Gua. So the Qin sector, meaning your northwest sector would be your 6 killing sector. So what does this mean? Well, the 6 killing itself is like a peach blossom sector. Some say it's an argument or dispute sector. It really depends, but personally, from the work that I've done so far, this you can actually activate unwanted romance using this, using the 8 mansions, using this method. So by placing, let's say, metal and water features in this sector, you can accidentally activate unwanted romance. Sometimes it is good. If it is in a business, you can activate it within the sales department because you want to generate sales. So you want a lot of random calls coming in. So you can utilize this sector if you run a business that has a sales department. So 6 killings representing yang water. There are patterns involved which uses the trigrams. So if you want to reduce the strength of this dispute or peach blossom sector, you can use wood, place it in this sector. Remember, it's the changing lines of the upper and the lower trigram. So if you are, let's say, if you are sitting south, that would be the Li Gua, right? So that would be this trigram, right? To change the upper and the lower, you would get this, the Kun Gua. So this represents the southwest sector. So be familiar with this, figure out what the changing lines are, the upper and the lower, and you'll be able to find your 6 killing sector. In 8 mansions, there are 8 houses. So basically, I'm just going to be talking about, for this one, I'm talking about this one, and I'm also going to only talk about relationships. the relationship sector. So with this one, basically all 3 lines changes. So if you are sitting south, basically your romance or relationship sector is the north, right? Because all 3 lines changes. So the only way to understand this method is to understand the trigrams thoroughly. So for example, with this one, I was doing a consultation for a female. She was having relationship issues. She couldn't meet the right man. I was looking at her house and I noticed, okay, she's sitting north, and I was looking at her relationships sector. Well, if you look at the 3 lines, basically the Li Gua is the changing line. That is her relationship sector. Well, unfortunately, part of it is in the toilet. So, toilet's dirty, right? So, attracting a lot of unwanted men, right? Men that are considered kind of lower quality. That's what she was attracting. And I was also looking at her 6 killing sector, which was down here. So I was able to actually give her some proper remedies for this. In terms of dealing with this, I actually had to place some earth in this sector, because this Li itself is fire, right? And the relationship is more water. So I had to use 2 elements in order to provide a bridge, because right here, the fire and the water is in conflict. So I placed earth and metal. So you got fire feeding the earth, and earth feeding the metal, and the metal feeding the water, in order to provide a bridge for her relationship sector. Oops, just gonna skip that. Okay, I want to talk quickly about 4 pillars in romance and aquarium. So to identify the romance star, there is a formula in place. So let's say you are born in the year of the dragon. Your romance star is the rooster. So you would look at where the rooster is located on your Chinese compass. And you would determine, okay, what's going on? Is there any bad energy going into that specific sector? If there is, you might have relationship issues. Let's say there's an empty vase in that sector. Relationship might be missing, right? It's the same goes for all these other ones. Let's say you are born in the year of the goat. Your romance star is the rat, right? Also determine what's going on in that sector. You might want to enhance it by placing a water feature or an aquarium. But obviously you have to look at the form itself too, whether the form allows you to put an aquarium there. If it's in the toilet, obviously there's going to be problems happening with your relationships. I'm just going to quickly look at a birth chart, a few birth charts. For this one, born in the year of the rooster, right? So according to the patterns, the romance star of the rooster is the horse. So I would look at the horse sector and see what's going on, whether I can actually activate the specific sector for its romance star. I will look at whether there is any negative energy, any poison arrows that are targeting that sector. I will also look at whether the horse is favorable for this type of chart. Well, to make a long story short, this chart is not favorable to the horse. When I look at a chart, I look at the flow, and essentially there is a rooster and a snake combination which tries to form metal, and there's a lot of earth. So preferably you want to go with earth and metal in a chart like this. Unfortunately, the horse is not favorable to this person. The horse represents fire. So this chart surrenders to earth, you throw fire into it, and then no longer does it surrender to earth. You're going to have issues and high possibilities of remarriage, because the spouse palace is replicated in the month. For a female, obviously this is better because it's for a male, but for a female it's different, because the more combinations you have in the branches of a chart, high possibilities of remarriage for sure. Because the branch, when you have lots of combinations, you're definitely very good with people. You have a lot of connections with a lot of people. as well. So high possibilities of remarriage. And to double up the spouse palace, which is located in the day branch, most likely this person might remarry. This is very general. Obviously, it's better if I had the birth hour as well. That might change things. So looking at the south, if you want to activate, let's say you're born in the year of the rooster, your romance star is the horse, and if you like the horse, great. You can put an aquarium here in the south sector to activate the romance. Round buildings and the exterior makes a difference because round buildings, generally, I find that round buildings attract a lot of extracurricular activities, I would say, between men and female. It's, if you do more consultations or if you look at more round buildings and the people residing in round buildings, you'll be able to notice that there's a lot of people moving in and out and just things happening in round buildings. Generally speaking, it's very rare, I think, in the UK for people to be residing in round buildings. More possible in North America because there's more land available, but in London there's less land available, and so a lot of high rises, they're quite squared. But round buildings, a lot of movements in and out. Business buildings, I think in Canary Wharf has a lot of round buildings. Should check the businesses in those buildings. Probably a lot of turnover. High turnover rates in round buildings, especially in Hong Kong. I got friends that are, well, their birth chart actually attracts these types of work. So they constantly get laid off and they constantly get fired. So they move on to another building, which is round. So they're getting recycled from building to building. I'm gonna have pictures and examples of them later. Annual stars, we have to look at annual stars as well. So the annual 1 and the annual 4, they represent relationships and romance. The 4-star also represents scholarly pursuits, and it's actually a study star. So enhancing these 2 stars is beneficial. So if you're familiar with annual stars, you would know, well, if you've actually studied about annual stars, you would know which sectors to activate and what to do with these sectors and how they actually influence your flying stars. So you have to look at the big picture. You have to have the annual stars, you have to have the flying stars, and you have to look at the form. And you have to look at a person's birth chart. That's the traditional practice, the traditional way of doing things in the Chinese community. Romance does not always equate to relationships all the time. Romance can also relate to just interpersonal connections. Like if we're in a business, right? How do we, if we activate the romance star, we can actually enhance the relationships between departments amongst the people that are working in the specific department itself. Some Feng Shui practitioners would go even further to analyze the monthly flying stars. I don't really do that. That's too much work. So I tend to be lazy. So. Yes, 4 pillars is used to determine the quality and nature of the partner, including characteristics. By looking at your 4 pillars chart, I can determine what types of men do you attract. Do you attract older men, men older than you by 10 years, or perhaps you might constantly attract younger men. For men, if I look at let's say, if I look at a male's chart, I can determine whether this person might get into an affair or whether this person is very shy. Sometimes there are men that will never get married in their life. So there are a lot of things that you can look at in a 4 pillars chart. You can look at a person's characteristics, you can look at a person's career, you can look at their relationship with their family members. You can determine whether this person is more suitable for early marriage or late marriage. The length of marriage can also be determined from the 4 pillars chart. How do you know whether he or she is the one? That's always the question that I get, especially from younger female. You need the chart of the partner in order to determine whether he is the one. It is very hard to say, especially in this day and age. We are in period 8. A lot of people are acting like rebels and teenagers. So it's very difficult for relationships to last for the younger generation at this moment. People are just being rebellious. That's the dominating theme of this period until 2023. Clashing energy. Clashing energy could be harmful or deadly. Well, it depends. Some clashes are good. So we can't look at a chart and say, okay, for let's say the year of the rabbit this year, if you were born in a rooster, everybody says, oh no, I got a clash because this is the year of the rabbit. Well, you're only looking at one symbol. When we look at 4 pillars, it's about the 8 characters, not just one. So we can't generalize and say, oh, you got a clash, so it's going to be bad. A lot of the people, I find especially a lot of Chinese people, they read a lot of these books and they would look at the clash and they would start freaking out and they would call me out and say, hey, I read this book and then they said that I'm going to have relationship issues or blah, 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 and so on and so forth. But they don't know what's in their spouse palace as well, whether there's a clash in the spouse palace or whether this clash is favorable or not. That's where 4 pillars consultants come in and look at the birth chart and determine what this clash is going to affect, whether it's going to be your health, whether it's going to be your family. So in terms of relationships, we look at the spouse star and the spouse palace, not just the spouse palace. So for male, their spouse star or spouse energy would be the wealth element. For female, it would be the controlling element. But then again, this is still a very brief introduction to 4 pillars. There's a lot more that we look at. We look at all the combinations, look at whether the spouse palace is void. So if you ever want to study 4 pillars, you have to understand that it is not a 1-year work where you get a diploma and then you're done. This is more than a 10-year research effort or even more. And you have to get this correct too. You have to be trained properly in order to understand what's going on. Giving the wrong advice will cause problems to not only the practitioners themselves, but to the people that are involved. I'm just going to quickly cover another birth chart here. This female is water. So what's going on with this one? When I look at the spouse palace, it is located here. There is a fight to combine between the goat and the horse and the goat and the horse. So essentially, this female, she tends to attract men that are already in a relationship. And all the men that she's dated, they are always in a relationship. Some of the men actually already have a family and they have kids, and she constantly attracts to these people. And you can tell from this birth chart. There is also earth hidden underneath here, right? Earth being the controlling element of the water. Then now you can tell that, okay, this is the spouse palace and she's got men down here with other partners. Well, this is my book, and my book covers a lot more in terms of relationships. I'm going to quickly show you some slides and pictures about form school. We don't have time? Okay, that's okay. I guess that's it. It's a shortened version. I tried to cover as much as I can. It might sound very brief. There's a lot more in-depth information if you actually want to enhance or understand a relationship life. And one more note I want to make for next year, the 6 is in the middle. So there's a reason why I wrote about relationships this year, and there is a reason why I write about another topic next year, which you will see out there in the market. It is on potential and career. Number 6, representing that number 6 trigram, 乾卦. If you want to know why I'm writing more on potential and career, maybe if you look into the trigram, you might understand why I'm looking into that.